Hi, welcome to Changemakers, a smarter school podcast exploring how to live a successful and happy life. I am Katlego Motlogelwa, your host. On every episode, I talk to great thinkers and doers from different walks of life who are at the forefront of positively impacting society. Our conversations focus on their specific journeys to achieving their goals. We talk mindsets, books, advice, and tools they use to keep them motivated. All the key ingredients you need for a happy and fulfilling life. I hope you enjoy this next episode.
What many people don't realize is that you don't get promoted because of tenure, because you've stayed for so long, or because you deserve it. You get promoted to the next level because you're already operating at that level. Then they say this person operates at this particular level, they deserve the promotion to that particular level. So you don't start operating at a particular level when you're promoted into that role. No, it's the other way around.
Sure.
You get promoted to that role because you're operating at that level already. So you always need to keep working ahead of where you are, work to where you want to be, operate at that particular level. So that like the movement to that level is just natural and no one can deny it and no one can even contend it.
Sorry that my voice sounds so bad, man, but I hope you'll be able to hear me. You know, these things happen. And I hope that if we do indeed decide to publish this episode, that it will be audible enough and not a bad listening experience, you know, for the audience or listeners. So firstly, thank you for making time to come onto the Changemakers podcast. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. How have you been? How's Cape Town?
Cape Town is good. I was talked to my wife about how we enjoy it here. It's good for raising families. On the downside, you get quite a small plot for what you probably get in Joburg. Other than that, it's really lovely. We've enjoyed it. We've been here since 2016. It's been interesting.
2016. That's interesting. So when you're saying small pot, you mean in terms of your salary? You think people in Cape Town are paid less?
No, I haven't come across that. I have read about that. I have people saying that. I'm not sure. I wouldn't use myself as a statistic because it's just one person. So it's probably true. Personally, I'm not sure. I haven't experienced that. I haven't really seen a difference between here and when I was in Joburg.
Oh, that means I misheard you. I thought you were saying you get a small pot when you are in Cape Town compared to when you're in Joburg. So,
Oh, no, I was talking about real estate. We're talking about real estate. So we always look at like real estate, look at the prices of houses around here compared to similar suburbs in Joburg. Joburg, you get something much bigger than here generally. I wasn't talking about the income.
oh yeah, no, I get you. Yes, I know definitely. I mean, the house prices they are quite high, significantly higher compared to Joburg, definitely. Um, so I mean, without further ado, you know, the first question is always, you know, who's Mpendulo Ndlovu? You know, where do you come from? Where were you raised? Where did you go to school? And sort of give us a summary of your journey to get to where you are today.
Right. I grew up in Swaziland. Eswatini is my home. I went to public schools there and did A levels at St. Mark's High School. And then I went to vets to do engineering. I did electrical engineering. But when I finished, I didn't feel like going to work as yet. I wanted to do postgrad and I wanted something more exciting. And so I went into telecoms. Took a year doing masters in telecoms and then went to industry. I joined Huawei. I stayed there for like only 7 months, so so we installed media gateways for MTN, Vodacom, and all these telecom companies and stuff. And then I moved into encryption, software engineering, which is basically where I've been since. More from there, then I went into FinTech. I came down to Cape Town specifically for FinTech because I wanted to learn about FinTech. Spent some time building apps for banks, for retailers, for insurance companies, also the financial services. And then once I felt I had a good grasp in that, and then I moved into crypto, which is something I've always been wanting to, which is where I am now. I'm a principal iOS engineer at Luno, and we develop mobile wallets.
Sure. For Luno, eh? I think we can mention the company you work for.
Yes, that's Luno. Yes, we've
Yeah.
just been
So
celebrating having it as one of the Cape Town skyline buildings. The one at TV Samsung is now in Luno building.
yeah, just next to the three corporate buildings of the main three banks in South Africa, right? It's just there in the
That's right.
middle. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite a good site. So I mean, you did electrical, and then you went into telecoms, and then software engineering. Was software engineering part of your undergrad and your masters that you did, or is this something you picked up afterwards?
Right. I wrote my first program. I believe that was in second year. I think it was the second year of electrical engineering. I had never done any programming before, and I was with kids who I started working on Linux distributions when they're like 9 or 10. So it always felt like something that you can never learn or catch up with people. And I actually failed it in third year. I think, yeah, I failed one course in my entire university, and that was software engineering. And so I had to do that course again. And so when I finished, I felt, okay, now I can program robots. My final year project was an automated robot from CSIR that was using lasers to navigate around unmanned without anyone controlling it, which is pretty cool. And I felt a bit more comfortable at the time, but I felt I still need to learn more about software engineering. So I stayed behind for telecoms because I wanted to do telecoms, which is a lot more evolving field than the traditional high voltage engineering. But at the same time, I wanted to bring in an aspect of software engineering in there and develop something in the telecoms aspect. So I was doing fault error correction there. Although I ended up using MATLAB, really, which I don't really classify as programming. Yeah, it's mostly simulation, just the right code, but I wouldn't say it's programming. So then when I left Huawei, I felt that it wasn't quite giving me personal skills that would empower me to make change in industry and to build industries, to start my own companies. That is why I only lasted there 7 months. And I felt I needed something where I can have more capacity, personal capacity, than gaining experience to work for another company. And that's why I went into software engineering. And so I was already fairly comfortable going into software engineering there because I'd already done a bit of it at university. Obviously, you do one or two languages at university. In the workplace, there's so many different things, but once you learn the concept, it's pretty easy to pick things up. And so I was doing research engineering there. And one of the things I pride myself in, I was writing an algorithm. It's called the Jira buffer algorithm. It's for voice over IP applications that basically works on the audio as it arrives because it arrives out of sync. UDP packets arrive out of sync, and so it sounds very bad on the ear when it's sent over the wire, over the internet. So I wrote that algorithm to basically smooth out the audio so that it's audible on the ear. And at the time, it was actually better than the WhatsApp audio. That's when WhatsApp calling just came about. And that what I wrote for Secret, that company was Secret, it actually sounded better than how it sounded on WhatsApp. So that was sort of a personal milestone for me. Obviously, WhatsApp is a lot better now.
Yeah, so I wonder if you could fix my voice and make it sound a bit different today on this podcast, but maybe not.
I
I
definitely
just want
can. It's
to.
just an issue of frequency harmonics.
Is it? Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I want to track back to your years as a student. You said you failed at some point, and you failed what you're actually now doing most of, which is software engineering, right?
Right.
So how did you get over that? Most people when they fail, they sometimes think, okay, this is not for me. They go the other direction or look for other different, um, professions. How did you stick it out? What helped you to go through, that failure, and how did you become? Because now you are a principal lead, right, in one of the biggest fintechs, right, which is Luno today. How did you get there? How did you overcome your failure?
It was an incredibly embarrassing time, but I stuck it through and just said, I'm going to do this. And then I did it again.
And I had to confront my fears because when I stayed behind for masters, I wanted to specifically focus on taking those very fears that I came across in third year, failing something for the first time. I was like, this is the very same thing that I want to do for my masters, which was a big risk to want to do masters in something that you're not good at. And I did it and actually did it well. I finished it within 12 months. And it was a full dissertation master's in telecoms, which I think was not too bad for something that was sort of like your fear. So I enjoy taking challenges and going straight for the things that you fear and doing those things. And now I'm in software and I'm a principal engineer. I lead a team of engineers at Luno. We have 3 principals at Luno. 4 is one for Android, one for web, one for backend. So it's actually 4 years. And so if you look at the company of Luno size and being a principal there on something that at university I was seeing for the first time and that I actually failed, I think it sort of tells you that anyone can go and pick up something that they've never done before and go and excel in it and be even a leader in industry in it.
Were there any practical tools or strategies that you employed, to get over that fear and to also push your masters and now to become a seasoned professional and one of the top leads in Luno today? Like, what exactly did you do?
Probably there's absolutely nothing that beats personal determination. I spend a lot of time reading online, learning stuff. I learn by doing stuff. So I pick up something and I learn it and I write tutorials in it. I read quite a fair bit of books, but I probably spend more time doing technical stuff than I do reading books. So I don't read as many books as I would like to, because I also spend quite a lot of time trying to upskill in other technical areas of my career, and even things that are outside even of my own career, because I want to have a broader perspective of things. There's cloud, so I do machine learning. And then the traditional software engineering side of things and a couple of other things. It helps you to give a more rounded overall perspective of things. And I love learning languages. I even took Hebrew languages. I taught myself Spanish and I was learning Greek also. And you find that increases your aptitude and just helps you to pick up things faster when you force yourself to learn new things. Learning discipline, same thing whether you're taking sports. I do a bit of running, I do a bit of swimming, and a couple of other sports. So just like taking those various things and putting them in your schedule. If you think you're busy, try taking 2 more things and put them into your schedule. You realize you can actually add more stuff into your schedule and you're probably not as busy as you thought. And also, if you feel you're too busy, probably there are a couple of things that you can take out that you probably don't need or that you shouldn't prioritize on. You can reprioritize things better. So I think it's an issue of discipline and just going and going and going. Some things are really hard and you can go for some time and you don't feel like you're making progress. But before you know it, you realize you're actually doing it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I had a conversation with one of our guests, and she was talking about planning your days, and actually making sure that whatever you want to be or whatever you want to achieve, you look at the hours that you spend and say, which of these hours will actually help me, to get to where I want to be in the future, in the near future, And I think you sort of saying the same thing. So how do you do it? How do you schedule or plan your days? Because I mean, you have a child now, you have a wife, you run, you do biking, you learning 5 languages, and you're doing all these other things, and you're also giving people some mentoring, I think, as well on the side, and you lead a team. I don't know how large your team is. So how do you find time to do all of these things? And do you think that is there any aspect that you feel that currently is suffering, and how what's your process to try to improve that part?
Right. So it is virtually impossible to try and do everything at once. In computing, there's something called parallelism, and then there's concurrency. Parallelism is when 2 processes are running at the same time, But concurrency is when two processes are running not exactly at the same time. So the one runs and then it opens space for the other one to run, and then the other one opens space. So they sort of like go back and forth like that. And at the end of the day, they both look like they're happening at the same time, but it's not exactly at the same time. They're just like spacing each other based on the amount of resources the one needs at that particular time. So I think it's the same principle that we use as human beings. You prioritize. On Mondays, this is what I do. I've got meetings. I've got a church meeting every Monday evening. Tuesday, you prioritize, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I go running. Maybe I do CrossFit or something. Wednesday, I do something else. Thursday, I go swimming. Friday, you do something else. The weekends, it's mostly time with my family. In the evening, between 6 and 8, I don't pick up a call. I don't look at my phone generally. It's time with my family until my daughter goes to sleep. And only then I can start attending to stuff and I can start working. So it's all about prioritizing, having particular times that you look out for something specific. Even now when you work, now that we work online, there's always stuff going on in Teams. If you use Teams or Slack, if you use Slack like me, you need to block out some particular times. You say, this time I'm reviewing other people's work. This time it's my own work. I'm doing my own work. This time is for meeting. This time is for this particular thing. So you need to block things and do things in particular blocks. And obviously you appreciate that you can't do everything at the same time or in the same day. Some things is for another day, other things for another day. Some things are good in the morning, like gym is good in the morning for me. Swimming, I can do it in the afternoon, that sort of thing. So you sort of can prioritize like that. And then some things you can learn in the morning when your mind is fresh. Some things you're okay learning them later in the day when you're feeling a little bit tired.
Yeah. I think that's great, and I want us to dive a bit deeper into that philosophy of planning and prioritizing. And I think it's probably easier when you are at your level now. You senior, you can block out and say, hey, keep quiet to the people maybe who are under. I'm busy now, But have you always had this sort of strategy in terms of how you spend your time, like from an early age? And also, when you started working, was it easy for you to communicate maybe with your seniors to say, okay, this time, this is what I'm doing, I can only do this at a certain time? How did you go about that? So from an early stage, how did you do it?
Right. As human beings, we are very adaptive. We are incredibly adaptive than we can realize, and you never know it until you're put in that situation. Until I'm going to use a stereotype here, until maybe you're somewhere in Afghanistan and bullets are flying, and then you realize you need to do something to keep alive. You won't know some of the things that you're capable of doing until you're in that particular situation. So it's the same thing. If you don't have a job, for example, and you're sitting at home, you spend hours and hours on social media, watching TV, or doing whatever that you can do just to keep busy. And you don't realize how much time passes, and you don't realize that with the series that I've watched, the 5 seasons now, I could have actually done 3 courses on Coursera that are probably free or on Udemy. And so you don't realize how much time is passing because you think you have the time, you don't have obligations. So it's the same thing when you're an employee. Before I had so much responsibility, I was just doing things ad hoc because time was allowing. I've always wondered how top CEOs manage to have all the time to do all the things that they need to do. Until I got into leadership positions and I had so much responsibility and almost everyone is looking for you the whole time, then you're forced to adapt and be pragmatic about things. And you look at how can I manage things. Like I put my Slack off. It doesn't show I'm online at any particular time so that people don't have the expectation that I'm going to respond immediately. I can respond later in the day. And also I communicate that, okay, now I can make my Slack to say in focus mode, and people can see that, okay, now it's not available, and that sort of thing. So before I took so much responsibility, I was just getting things done because time was allowing. I wasn't in as many meetings. I didn't have as many people needing help from me or asking things from me and that sort of thing. But the more stuff you have, the more you're forced to be more creative, to do time management better and to block things better. And also, fortunately, the more you have the what do I call it, the right, or should I say the privilege of being able to block. Yes, where you can block and say, okay, I'm not going to attend this now. I'll get back to you later. And yet, as an employee, as a junior employee, when someone requests something, you feel obligated that you need to respond immediately. Even if it's my manager or even the VP of engineering, if he sends me a message or something, I can read it and not respond to it, and then I can respond to it later because I'm busy. And that seniority allows me to be able to do that whoever needs anything from me, I can only get back to them when it's convenient for me because I'm busy with something, and everybody respects that. So it's just about adapting things and using the position where you are. Even when your employee doesn't mean that you can't plan your day better. You can still plan your day better and do a lot more. In fact, that's when you get the time to take advantage of the more time you have to do better, to excel at things, to take initiative on new projects, run with projects and champion them and make your name to be out there, to be seen. And then once your name is out there, unfortunately, you'll get more responsibility. Then fortunately for you, because you've been practicing these things, you'll just seamlessly adapt into taking more responsibilities.
Yeah. So I want to dive in a bit more on this leadership aspect, and how, you are leading and developing the team that you're working with. But before you respond to that, what was your ascendance? What do you think set you apart, from other people, to get to where you are today? Excuse me. Sorry, let me just take a sip. To get to where you are today, was there anything that set you apart from the others? Did you do anything differently to get you where you are? What attributes do you think you possess, or what knowledge do you think you have that maybe others don't have, that got you to, get to the position that you are in today?
Right. That's a difficult question. Firstly, I don't believe that people are self-made. I believe that people are made by lots of people around them, lots and lots of people. In my case, when I finished in the countryside where I was studying, someone offered to take me to stay with them when I was doing my A-levels, and I didn't pay a cent. When I was at university, when I failed my course and the sponsorship dropped me, a friend of that same person who took me paid for my fees. And so you look at all the journey and you realize that maybe you're not as self-made as you think you are. Were it not for those things, you probably wouldn't be where you are today. My mom had to take out some of her savings and pay for me. So she didn't have to, but she did. And so even at Luno is a place with an incredible culture. We have, we call them mentalities, basically these values that people need to have for them to be successful. And one of those is we think big, but we're humble. People are very smart here, very, very smart, but they are very humble and always willing to help. And so I've learned from a lot of other engineers who've helped me to be where I am today. Obviously, having all the support structure still requires you to do quite a fair bit of work yourself. So part of that, one thing I've realized in many organizations is that there are very few leaders. By leaders, I don't mean people in leadership position, I mean people who function as leaders. Functioning as a leader means that when you see that, okay, there's this process improvement we can actually do, they pick that up, they champion it and say, hey, this is what I've done. And everyone says, like, wow, this looks incredible. And they incorporate that in, and now we've got a process improvement in place. They see a particular something that can be done, they pick that up, they do it and say, hey, this is what I've done, I think it's going to help us in this particular way. Someone reports a problem, everyone sits back and say, oh, someone is going to pick it up. And no one is taking ownership of that. So there's very few people who will jump forward and say, hey, let me help, and then they help and provide a solution and take the company from one place to another. what many people don't realize is that you don't get promoted because of tenure, because you've stayed for so long, or because you deserve it. You get promoted to the next level because you're already operating at that level. Then they say this person operates at this particular level, they deserve the promotion to that particular level. So you don't start operating at a particular level when you're promoted into that role. No, it's the other way around.
Sure.
You get promoted to that role because you're operating at that level already. So you always need to keep working ahead of where you are, work to where you want to be, operate at that particular level. So that like the movement to that level is just natural, and no one can deny it, and no one can even contend it. So that's the best way to go forward, is always operate at the next level to where you are. You need to go that extra step. You're not doing it for your company, you're doing it for yourself, because it's good for your own personal development. So that I think that is the one underpinning thing that's very important: taking ownership, championing things, finding what can be improved, pick it up and do it, and always present the best solutions. So sometimes people think about the here and now. The solution fixes the problem, yes. And this also points maybe to seniority. Yes, maybe there's someone that's done everyone reviews like, yes, looks good. Someone with more experience comes in and stands like, yeah, this works, but this is not going to be extensible. Tomorrow we may implement this module. This will only work with this particular specific scenario. We want it to be extensible. And then request people to make changes so that things are extensible. So you always need to look ahead in the solutions to create. This looks fine now, but where are we going to be in future? We're going green. This looks fine now in terms of using diesel, but how about tomorrow? Should we be looking at setting up something that's going to be sustainable for tomorrow, even though today it may look like an overkill? So you need a good balance of the here and now and looking into the future.
Yeah, no, I get you. I think, so you're saying someone should just take the promotion even before it's handed to them. So behave as if you are in that position even before you are promoted. I think that's a very great philosophy. And you're saying you should not just be thinking about today, but of the future, which is also related to, thinking, if I was an MD today, or if I was a CEO today, what would I be doing, in that position, and try to do it today instead of waiting to be that thing. But how do you sort of develop that sort of outlook? What do you think gave you that sort of outlook? Where does it come from, or do you think that's what everyone has? We all have that in us, or is there a certain process or a certain program or certain sort of thinking that we should be attuned to get to that?
Right. This is probably another really difficult question. I think is like watching Paul Scholes, if you know a bit about football, playing for Manchester United in his prime time, looking at the passes that he'd make diagonally across the field, which is incredibly beautiful, other than the fact that the pass goes directly to that person at the far corner of the pitch, maybe to David Beckham at the corner there. But the fact that having that vision to see, and if Paul Scholes is not there, there's another player there who's playing in his position, and he's not able to make those passes, not even making those passes, not able to see that I could actually pass the ball there because most of the opponent is in the left side of the pitch, and then make a diagonal pass, even if they have the ability to make that diagonal pass, but they don't have the vision to look there. So some of those things are natural gifting. We can't deny that there's a bit of talent, but there's also a lot of hard working that's involved in training yourself, in working on your mind to focus on those things that you know that you should be looking at. I always read about Cristiano on how he always is the first and the last to leave pitches, and how he's always demanding of his coaches from the food he eats to just about everything, and he is a supreme athlete. So you see that this guy is really talented, but the amount of effort that he puts in is also a sheer amount of effort. So I think it's the same thing when it comes to this. There are certain aspects where some people are pretty good at it naturally when they're junior than some who are senior than them. But also there's also the aspect, obviously, in fact, that's the majority part, that they are actively thinking about that how do I make this abstraction as abstracted as possibly as best as it possibly can be. How can I make it usable tomorrow? So some people are lazy. There's also what I call technical laziness, where you just think about the quickest solution to get something working and you ship that out. You don't take time to sit back and think, is this going to be useful tomorrow? Is this going to be extensible? Can someone plug this and put it somewhere else outside of this context? One particular very important advice my manager told me, my previous manager, he said to me when I was just moving levels to, I think it was before the level I am at now, and he said to me, now the most important thing that I want you to take time on, you're really writing exceptional quality. You are producing a lot of code in a short period of time. You're doing very well. But now I want you to step back and not start measuring your performance based on how much work you do, but based on how much thinking you do. So be comfortable with with doing less work and thinking more, and think more strategically about the impact of the work that you're doing. And I think that requires a bit of a paradigm shift, because you just want to get stuff done quickly and show that you can do a lot of work. But now you need to take more time to think more and work less. So when you think more, you realize you probably even write less code, for example, because it's so well abstracted that you don't need to write like long blocks of code or whatever that you do in your profession, because it is so well abstracted. So it is all about that. You get given a problem, take time and sit back. What is the root cause of the problem? Don't fix the symptom, fix the root cause. What is the root cause? If I fix the root cause, then I'm going to fix potential symptoms tomorrow that may arise. But if I fix the symptom, maybe it's just one of other symptoms and another symptom is going to show up, and then I'm back to the same place. So I think that helps to sit back and look at the root causes, and then look at how you can make whatever impact that you're making to be long lasting.
Yeah, let's stay with the theme of leadership and forward thinking. So now you have your team, right? So I guess for every leader, the challenge is, can the team function if I'm not here, right? You have to capacitate and skill these people to grow and be able to function without, being too instructive. So how are you then today doing that for your team? How are you getting them to be in that space where they're also sitting and thinking, CEO, even though they are not CEO, thinking more strategically, not just solving problems quickly for the sake of having an output? How are you doing that with your team currently?
That is an incredible question. I'm glad you asked. Probably the most important question really for any leader. It's a very, very important question. You hear when people say it keeps me awake at night. Well, it doesn't keep me awake at night. At night I sleep. I think during the day.
Sure.
It's a very important question, and it is something that I've spent a lot of time investing in doing that, and in putting mechanisms in place to ensure that when I'm not there, people can be able to do the work. I never want to feel so important that some things can't be done without me. It makes me a terrible leader, and in fact, it overworks me, because it means that I will have to be responsible for doing so many things. So it's a couple of tools that you use. One of the most powerful tools as a leader is delegation. So you learn to delegate. You say, hey, here's some work that needs to be done. These are some challenges you may come across. This is how I've typically solved them in the past. You're free to use your own approach. Please go ahead and do it. If you have any problem, get back to me. I'm more than happy to help. You give them just enough for them to use their own thinking to get the work done, but you empower them enough so that they are aware of some possible pitfalls, and then in their approach and their problem solving, they keep that in mind, that there are pitfalls like that, so that they can be able to apply themselves better to apply those, and ensuring that the solution is proof of those pitfalls. I found that incredibly beautiful. And some leaders misunderstand what delegation is. They think delegation is to take the dirty work and give it to some other colleagues to do it for you. that is not delegation. I don't know the term for that. It's probably not a very nice term either. I know that.
Food soldier. They're making you a food soldier.
Yeah, okay, it's food soldier. And spoon feeding is terrible. You don't want that. And believe me, people are very clever. They are intelligent. They can tell if some work is given to them as dirty work to clean up dirty laundry, or is given to them to challenge them and to help them grow. So delegation is to give work that you yourself will be proud of doing. If it's work that you wouldn't be proud of doing then that is not delegation. So over and over again, I take some of the best work, like for example, I'm in iOS and people really love to work on things like widgets, Apple Watch, and those sort of things, having support for those different devices in the iOS ecosystem. It's what most iOS engineers want to do. They love doing that. And while I love doing that myself, I choose to delegate that work. As I speak, 2 of those projects, I've delegated them to engineers to do, which myself I'm itching to do. Because I want them to enjoy what they're doing, to feel empowered to do what they do, and to be always looking forward to more, to be looking at how we can develop things. And then, so that's the one aspect, delegation. Then the other aspect is documentation. That's another incredibly important aspect of things. So you want to document, how do we release builds to the App Store, for example, if you're releasing builds to make them available to customers? How do we set up our server to run the builds? How do we do this? When it comes to interviewing, you document, you put down the question banks, and then you document, this is how you ask candidates. These are things you're looking for when you're interviewing candidates. You document just about every important process. Documentation should be in such a way that it leaves room for creativity on the person reading it, but it should also be detailed enough so that people don't have to remain with questions after reading what has been documented. So documentation is very, very powerful, because you could be away and people know where the documentation is and they go and read it and do exactly what needs to be done, and life continues as if you're not there. So I think those are 2 of the most important aspects of growing your teams and making them independent.
Sure. So you don't have any cheesy lines that you give them to shift their mindsets and be more futuristic and problem solving more broadly. You don't have any of that. You just do these practical things. This is what
I don't believe I don't believe in cheesy lines. I don't believe a lot in motivation. I do listen to lots of motivational talk, but I think that people can listen to that and inspired for a second and forget about it the following moment. I believe in principle.
Yeah.
People need to be taught principles. Principles stick. People learn principles and they do principles even when it is not convenient, but because it's a principle. When it's your principle, for example, whether if you're a believer to pray, you pray even when you're tired, because it's a principle, it's something that you do. So one of the most important principles is a simple question, why? So whenever you want to do something, so we have something called design docs. So a technical design doc, so when there's a big feature or a project that needs to be done, I always insist, and even as a company, engineering, Luno engineering, we insist on you creating a design doc. You create a design doc. What is the problem that we're currently experiencing? And how do we want it solved? So by how do you want it solved, then you are going to, but before you talk about how it's going to be solved, you talk about what outcome would make a good solution. So you talk about the desirable things. And it's also very important to discuss what are the things that are non-goals. So it's also very important when you're defining a specification to define what the specification does and solve. So that it's clear that this is the goal, this is what we're solving, and we are not trying to solve this. And then once that is clear, then you can now come to the how. And then you start talking, you basically say, idea 1, we consider this idea that we could do it in this particular way, but these are the challenges that come with that. And these are the pros, these are the advantages of that, but we feel the disadvantages are a bit outweighing the advantages. Idea number 2, idea number 3, and then you have a proposed solution. because of the above, this is the proposed solution. It is good in this particular way. It's extensible in this way. We feel that it best represents the problem solving for this particular feature. So you can see that the person has applied a lot of thinking, looking at what is the problem, what is the root cause, what is the outcome that we want, assuming that this problem is now solved. And then you talk about how we're going to solve that. So it's the same thing when people are doing work. You basically want them to ask themselves, why? Why are we doing this? So if you choose this particular solution, you must have looked at other. It can't be the only solution. There can never be only one solution to a problem. There will always be multiple solutions. So you should be able to answer very confidently as to why that particular solution. That means that you've already considered other solutions and you've done assessment and you have a strong why this is. If you don't have a why, it's not a good solution. No one should accept anything that comes from someone who doesn't have a why on why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, you said you don't do cheesy. That's very cheesy. Why? I'm joking. Thank you for listening. This is not the end of my conversation with Mpendulo. I hope you enjoyed our chat and got some actionable advice you can apply in your life. The second part of our chat will be published on Tuesday, 30 November. We will dive deeper into Mpendulo's life philosophy. This has been a Smarty School production. Catch you on the next episode. Stay smart and keep well. If you enjoyed this episode of Changemakers, please subscribe if you have not already. Help us spread the word by rating and commenting on the podcast. We like hearing from you, as this will help us create better content and reach more people. Share this episode with your friends, family, and colleagues whom you think will benefit or like this sort of content. If you have questions for me or my guest, or topics that you would like us to discuss next time, email me at podcasts@smartyschool.co.za.